Good morning. How are you guys this morning? Man, first service was like way more enthusiastic. I mean, like I don't want to start a rivalry or competition here, but come on, all right. Like you said, I'm Brock Craddock. I'm the associate pastor here. Last time I spoke, Nick, when he was giving me some feedback, he told me I had a bad habit of holding the mic like this. Um, and you can't see my face, but that comes from my extensive rap background. And I just want you to know I'm trying. I will do my best to keep it down here, but I was known as the hip hopopotamus. If you guys are familiar. Um, so, but anyway, today I want to talk to you guys about apathy. Um, Apathy is a lack of emotion. It's a lack of feeling, and I think in our lives, and especially like more recently, it can be a killer of our faith and of our church. When I was going to school at Western, I took a psychology class, just like basic psychology. That's easy to say, psychology. We heard a story about a woman named Kitty Genovese. In 1964, 29-year-old Kitty Genovese was a bar manager. She got off work about 2:45, 3 o'clock in the morning, drove home, and didn't realize that she was being followed. She got out of her car back behind her apartment building. A man got out of his car, ran her down, and started to stab her. As she ran away, she ran to the front of the building, screaming and yelling the whole time, obviously. And he continued to run after her and stab her. The New York Times records that there are 38 witnesses to this event, 38 witnesses to the murder of Miss Genovese, 38 people that didn't do anything, 38 people that were apathetic. The murderer didn't get caught until about a week later when he was caught at a robbery and then confessed. So I'll tell you that story that I learned it broke my heart. It still breaks my heart. It happened 50 years ago, but it's still relevant and still breaks my heart today. And I think one of the things that really hurts me about it is in psychology they tell you that story to point out what they call the bystander effect and the diffusion of responsibility. Because there were so many witnesses, the idea is that we think that everybody else assumed that everybody else was doing something. Everybody else assumed that somebody else knew more about the situation, was more trained, was better informed, and could then make a better determination of what needed to go on. And because of that, they were all frozen and nobody did anything. I think about myself sometimes in that when, you guys remember when Hurricane Harvey hit last year in Texas? And for whatever reason, that stood out to me. That broke my heart. And I thought, well, I don't have any special skills. I'm not a first responder. I can't swim, which is not a good trait to have if you're trying to save someone from drowning. I don't own a boat. And I heard a story about a guy who went down there. He loaded up his truck with hot dogs and hamburgers and took his grill. And he just sat outside grilling hot dogs and hamburgers for first responders and people that were coming, that were being rescued. And I heard about that, after it was all over. And I thought, man, I could have done that. I could have done something. But instead, I just sat at home and I didn't do anything. Another reason that I think that we're apathetic, I think that we get lost in that feeling of numbness is we get so much information. The volume of information given to us today on a daily basis is just incredible, right? I mean, you have these wonderful little devices in your phone or in your pocket all the time that have a whole wealth of information. And you hear it, whether it's on the TV, on the radio, over the internet, about just millions of crises going on. There are hurricanes, there's all kinds of other disasters, there's terrorism, there's sickness, there are kids in our schools getting shot, there's just so many things. And I think because that we develop sort of a numbness because there's so much to care about and so much to hear that we don't even know where to start. I'm really bad about this because I can't find anything uplifting or encouraging on the news, and it just all seems depressing. I tune out and I listen to a lot of sports radio, which really just is like, dudes talking about their emotions in weird ways. I think we could like try to pretend that it's something else, but it's really like soap opera for dudes. If there's not a game going on, so is this coach going to get fired? Is that coach going to get fired? Whatever. But like I said, there's just so much going on, and I think it can make us feel helpless. I think a lot of us kind of care. A lot of us feel like, I think I could do something about it. It's just, I got school, and I got work. I got a job. I got a life here. I got things to do. I got to get my kids to soccer practice. I got to go do this thing. I got bills to pay. I can't take the vacation time to go help somebody. Like, I got to take care of this, and I think it can leave us sort of feeling paralyzed and numb. And I think that also can be a slippery slope into depression, because sometimes there's nothing more depressing than feeling like you can't help, that you can't do anything, even if you know something needs to be done. And I think the biggest reason that we are apathetic today is that we are both blessed and cursed with comfort. I don't know if Tony's in here today, but I was thinking, you can get a Papa John's app, right? And you can get pizza delivered to your house without ever interacting with another human being. It's kind of cool, and it's, totally emotionless, totally devoid of that, and it's so easy. And I think about Amazon Prime, which is an incredible gift in ways, but Heather and I were sitting on the couch the other day, and she was coloring, and I don't mean to make her sound like a kid. She's got, I was going to say adult coloring books, but that sounds worse. But she's got these, it's a stress relief thing, and her marker went out, and she said, I think I need to order new markers. And I came home 2 days later, and there were new markers on my front porch. I was like, this is incredible, because I don't even remember seeing her order it. We don't have Alexa, as far as I know, unless Alexa just listens all the time and things that I don't know I have, which is scarier in a different way. And then, we got stuff like Netflix. And in our numbness, it's funny, I don't think anything makes me as righteously angry as when Netflix cuts out. All of a sudden, I'm super interested in how much we're paying for the internet and how much I'm paying Netflix a month for not working, right? Like, that, I'm going to say something that may alienate people under 25 in this room. I'm 30, and I remember when we suffered for the Lord with, 3 channels. And we had to use the antenna, and you had to adjust it just right. If I turned it to the west, we got channel 13. If I turned it north, we got wave 3. You guys remember that? Anybody? And if your show wasn't on, it just wasn't on. And now, with Netflix, I can just go pick whatever, and I can watch The Office 700 times. It's the best show ever. But I think the more comfortable we become, the more into that we become, the more selfish we become. Cambry and I were watching. Cambry's my daughter, by the way. We watched Moana, actually yesterday. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but Moana is a story of a girl living on a Polynesian island in the Pacific, and her dad is the chief, and it's a paradise. They have everything they could ever want on this island, and it's just perfect. And something happens, and they need to go. Moana feels like she needs to go, that she's being called out. She's being called into the sea. And her dad is just like, no, it's not safe. You can't go. You can't go beyond our reef. We're not there. And she goes to find out, from her grandmother, that they used to be voyagers. They used to explore the sea. That's how they got on that island. And they had become so comfortable where they were that they had forgotten who they are. They had forgotten that the sea was once what they defined them. And I think as Christians that we have a danger of that we're so comfortable in our homes not doing anything that getting out there and putting yourselves out there is scary, because it makes you might get hurt. And going out into the sea in Moana is the same thing. He was afraid she might get hurt, and it's true, you might. But it's so worth it to help somebody else. It is so worth it to be there for somebody and do something. So now that I have thoroughly depressed you, um, I was hoping you guys would want to talk about how to fix it. I felt that vibe coming from you because you're a smart audience. And so I got three ways that we can overcome this apathy that I think paralyzes us in a lot of ways. The first thing is pray. You should pray that, especially if you're apathetic, that God would break your heart for something or somebody. To break your heart for orphans, or to break your heart for disaster relief, or to break your heart for somebody that doesn't know him, or to break your heart for somebody that is in a foster organization or has an incurable disease or something, and that he would do that in a way to motivate you. If we look at in the book of Nehemiah, it's one of my favorite books in the Bible. Nehemiah is the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes in Persia. For those concerned with the Persian king lineage, he's after Xerxes, the guy who's in the 300, which is the manliest movie of all manly movies. And so this is 100 years after Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians, and Nehemiah gets word from his brother, who tells him that the city now is just in ruins. And Nehemiah, it says, he was told that those who survived the exile and are back are in great trouble and disgrace, and the wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. Cities back then had walls to keep other people out. You see, when I heard these things, I sat down and wept. Nehemiah's heart was broken for his home. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Because I don't know, I was imagining, like, because Glasgow is home. What if Glasgow was burned? My heart would be destroyed. But I prayed that for you. I would, like Nehemiah prayed, pray for Jerusalem. Pray for that thing that just breaks you. Pastor Nick talked a lot about in the last series how feelings follow faithfulness. If you are faithful in your prayer that God will break your heart, eventually you will feel broken for something. And then we can be motivated to do something. In the next verse, when Nehemiah prays, he prays that God remember the instruction that he gave Moses, saying that if you're unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. That's where they are currently. They're scattered about. He said, but if you return to me and you obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at the farthest reaches, I'll gather them there and bring them back to Jerusalem, the place, the holy city. So after you pray, you can make a plan. Nehemiah made a plan. Nehemiah knew what needed to be done, but he didn't just run in like head first. And I think sometimes even if we overcome our apathy, that could be a big mistake, is that we just run in and think, okay, well, I got to do this, I got to do something. And we don't actually think about what it is that needs to be done and how to do it. So research, look into it. Nehemiah did his research, and Nehemiah knew he needed to talk to get done what needed to be done. Nehemiah first asks the king, because he is cupbearer to the king. He has a job in the palace, and he has access to the king. And so when the king, with the queen sitting beside him, asked me, how long will your journey take? When will you get back? He knew. And it pleased the king to send him, so he set a time. And he also said, if it pleases the king, may I have letters to the governors of Trans-Euphrates, which is the province in between where he was going in the city of Susa in Persia, back to Jerusalem, so that they will provide me safe travel so I can get there and do what needs to be done. And then can I have a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the park, so I can get wood for the beams to rebuild, so I know what I have. Nehemiah knows what he needs to do, and he knows he needs a place to live. He also asks for a place to stay, a place to occupy. And then I feel like there's a pressure that we feel to, and because God's grace and was on him, the king granted his request. I feel like a lot of times, even when we start to branch out and we start to hurt and we start to think we have to then take it on ourselves, and you don't. You can join somebody or something already working toward that cause. There's 100,000 different awesome organizations. I would recommend you look into them, but the American Cancer Society is great. Habitat for Humanity, you can join somebody already doing something and be a part of something much bigger than yourself, and that is incredibly, incredibly rewarding. And then the next step, after you make your plan and you join somebody doing this, the next step is go and do it. And Nehemiah got to go and do it. He got to go and build his city and bring it back, to what it once was. He says, let's rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. They were shamed because God's city had been torn down. And he said, I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me and what the king had said to me. And so the people that he had brought with him, the people that he had come alongside him to help, they say, let us rebuild. So they began a good work. They began what was awesome. And I wanted to ask you guys, if you could imagine for a minute what Glasgow would be like if we really, really dug in and felt and loved one another. Jesus tells us that the two greatest commandments are to love God, and then number 2 is to love others, right? To really, really love one another. And what does that look like? I mean, can you imagine if we fed the hungry, if we clothed the naked? In the book of Matthew, Jesus tells us that when he tells us that when he comes back, he's going to separate people into, he says, sheep and goats. And the sheep he's going to look at and say, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was sick, you comforted me. When I was in prison, you came to visit me. And the sheep look back at him and say, Lord, I don't remember seeing you there. I don't remember you being there. He said, no, when you did it for the least of these, you did it for me. And to the goats, he looks at it and says, when you saw me hungry, you didn't give me food. And when you saw me naked, you didn't give me clothes. When I was sick, you didn't come to see me. And when I was in prison, you didn't come to see me. And they're like, Lord, if we knew it was you, we would have been there the whole time. And he said, when you didn't go for the least of these, you didn't go for me. And that verse convicts me every day. And I think a lot. I'm a nerd. I'm just gonna own that. And luckily, God saw fit to make another nerd in the form of Heather Faller Craddock and gave her to me. And now we are married and we have bred 2 little nerds. One of the really nerdy things that we love I love superhero movies, right? Love them. I don't care if they're good. I want to see them. Like, they could be the worst, and I still think they're awesome. Like the 1960s Batman. Have you guys seen that? He just punches people and the word "pow" pops up. Love it. I'm into it. And I was thinking, though, like, how lame would those stories be if those superheroes were like I feel sometimes? If they were just totally apathetic, it wouldn't be much good, right? Like, I just imagine, Batman, Bruce Wayne, like, sitting down after a long day at Wayne Tech, doing whatever billionaire playboys do at work. And outside Wayne Manor, you just see the bat signal, like, hanging out. And he's like, man, I just turned on The Office on Netflix, and it's the episode where Jim comes in dressed as Dwight, and it's gold, and I can't miss it. Can't they just... And then from, like, Bruce Wayne official Twitter or whatever, he types out, like, thoughts and prayers to the people of Gotham. I can't be bothered. Or if Superman, with all his powers, decided that he just wasn't into it one day. I mean, would it matter how much power Superman has if he never goes to save Lois Lane? I would encourage you that, like, God has given you a gift to be used to help other people. And it could be as simple as just having your ears open and listening. Sometimes that's all people want. Having a shoulder to cry on. Like, we don't all have to have, like, super first responder skills or, have the heat vision or things like that. I would challenge you to embrace what hurts. Don't run from it. Embrace it and pray that God would bless you with a burden for somebody or something else, and a passion for it, that it just fuels you. Because here's what I can promise you is that when you get in there and you get into helping somebody, God works on you, and those other things that you were worried about, those things that maybe you were afraid of being when you put yourself out there, just go away. And it's so rewarding to love like Jesus tells us to love. So my challenge to you today is to be be somebody worth writing stories about, because nobody writes stories about people at their house watching Netflix all the time. So with that, if you guys would stand and pray with me, and then we will sing another song. Dear Lord, I pray that you break our hearts for something, and then we go pursue it with a passion that gives you so much glory and spreads your love. God, I love you and thank you for the opportunity to talk about this with this group here today. You're amazing, and we love you and thank you. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.